Chapter 13. Conspiracies Unraveled. Merlara was surprised when Salso led her outside the camp, rather than to the Amina, or council, the tent where the chief and elders of the tribe always gathered. She understood quickly enough. A crowd of people turned to them as they approached. If people was the right word. Humans were heavily outnumbered by animals. Merlara was surprised to see not only wolves, but mountain lions gathering. They didn't live in the wild lands, but were some of the few Tokwai who lived near Tyor's northern border. Sumaisai didn't sit among them. She seemed more at ease with her brothers. Merlara recalled Sumaisai hadn't interacted with her kin since she was a cub. Amazua and Liseo sat with other members of the tribe on blankets, forming a large circle. Tyor, Nahim, Ladil, Terrell, and Kahira were also present. More wolves were approaching, along with a few eagles. Some were content on the ground, while others, with their permission, sat on the dragons' backs. The sight of so many races gathered together was significant enough, but Merlara felt a chill run through her, as she beheld 6 centaurs galloping across the plain. The centaurs' coats were black, while the human half of their bodies were a light brown. 3 were male. 3 were female, and wore dark brown leather shirts. The males had facial features that, excepting their color, was similar to those of Tyorrian race. 6 big cats, 3 tigers, and 3 leopards, ran alongside them, effortlessly matching their pace. Though they were smaller than the Kasia, they were slightly larger than the Tokwai. They came from the land of Biola, also home to unicorns, and griffins who lived in areas above the sea. Tales of their beauty and customs were numerous, but for Tyrians, the Biolan's proximity to the ocean held the most intrigue. Though many of these creatures lived in Tyor and Callagan, most had only vague memories of Biola from their elders. The Biolans had made a point of not joining the first alliance with the dragons, preferring to stay out of a war unaffecting them. Merlara understood their presence in the wild lands meant the coming war would affect more races than the first. To keep herself from staring at the centaurs, Merlara said, "Are your people sure it's wise to have both Kasia and Tokwai here?" "We're certain," Salsoa answered. "The Seldrian is everyone's enemy. We can count on them being reasonable in this regard." Merlara thought it best not to mention Sumaisai's mother had been killed by Kasia. She sensed Sumaisai would start a fight if they gave her an excuse to do so. Which would be a problem, as she knew enough about both sides, to know the Kasia wouldn't mind a fight either. The Kasia weren't native to the wild lands. They were very vague about where they came from. All that was known was that they came from somewhere in the far north. Some thought their ancestors were from Dunur, but left when war broke out. Though they fought fiercely, the Tokwai were outmatched by the superior strength and size of the Kasia. Though it was 3,000 years since they'd been driven from the wild lands, the Tokwai still carried a deep hostility for the Kasia. The Kasia weren't as aggressive, but the Tokwai's behavior kept them from having amiable feelings toward them. As she sat cross-legged between Salsoa and Tyor, Merlara wondered why she felt so ill at ease. Then memories of Ladil and Nahim informing her of the rumors against her, rushed into her mind. The day they had done so was the last day she had held a council. Barely 4 weeks before Toriel revealed herself to be the instigator. Though she reminded herself she was among friends, Merlara still felt tense and defensive, half expecting one of the Kasia, Tokwai, or Biolans to challenge her right to be there. The hostile looks the Kasia and Tokwai gave each other didn't help, especially as their gazes frequently turned to her, as if they were trying to read her, which, she knew, was exactly what they were doing. And why shouldn't they? She thought. What kind of leader am I, to lose my kingdom barely 3 months after ascending to the throne? Merlara's sense of embarrassment increased as the centaurs, tigers, and leopards arrived. Though the centaurs bowed to her respectfully without staring, the tigers and leopards made no attempt to hide the fact they were observing her, as if it was of little importance to them whether she noticed or not. When they had all gathered, Amazua spoke. "Welcome all. Today we face the most dangerous war since Telemivi. Everyone here knows of that terrible battle, in which the Seldrian attempted to destroy Tyor. What is not commonly known, is that not long before, the Seldrian attempted to take the wild lands, knowing us to be weaker than Tyor or Callagan. The Dunarians became aware of it, and without telling their allies, defended us." Merlara looked at Tyor. Their eyes met, and suddenly Merlara knew Tyor had known of this. "What else does he know that he hasn't told me? Why wasn't this recorded?" Terrell asked. "There is no evidence in Tyor's history that such a thing occurred." "That is what we intended," Aaron said. Aaron's voice was deeper than Aelist's, but not as deep as Merlara had expected. Still, she found it hard to believe he or Aelist could be considered young, even by Dunarian standards. "If your people knew we were helping the Silj and Kasia, they would have accused us of betrayal. We didn't expect you to understand that we fight for all people who would remain free. Callagan discovered it on their own, but to our surprise, didn't oppose our actions. Your rulers little suspected the danger of the Seldrian taking the wild lands. If they didn't conquer you, the wild lands' resources would have allowed them to gather enough strength to destroy you, and eventually Biola. So we acted accordingly. What else have you not told us?" Merlara asked. "I understand your reasons for keeping this from us, but there are other questions I want answered. How did your people know of my imprisonment? And why did my closest friends not tell me the dragons had returned?" "Surely you know the answer to your last question," Aelist answered. "Salso already informed you of the vultures spying for the Seldrian. And Amoldo recently discovered Tiriel has been using spies for some time, months before she moved against you. Though we didn't know of Tiriel's actions, we knew that spies were among you. Hence Ladiel, Nahim, and Tyor haven't had contact with us for some time, because of the danger it would put you in. As for your first question, we knew you were in danger not long after you were imprisoned. You can thank Tyor we knew as soon as we did." Merlara turned to him. "That's why you sent the message?" Tyor nodded. "My family is part of a secret organization called Amini Sen, or the Dragon Guardians. Chief Amazua, Liseo, Ladiel, Lady Kahira, and Nahim are also a part of it. Your parents were members as well. Because I'm the youngest in my family, and thus not seen as a threat by our enemies, it was safer to send me as a spy rather than my sister, though she's 3 years older. It was my job to ensure word reached Callagan if you were in extreme danger. When I heard of the rumors being spread about you, I sensed it was closer than we had at first anticipated. It is well that you trusted me, as the Eagles were spying on the Seldrian at the time, and had no knowledge of our plight. The night Tiriel betrayed us, I was able to escape with Visiri, Kunusk, and Lestri. Aelist and Aaron met us only 8 leagues outside the city. King Orga had had a vision implying you were in danger, though the nature of it wasn't clear to him. Aelist and Aaron had been in the wild lands for only 3 days, when my message came through. Higlek told me you were dead. That was most likely to make you surrender. He and some of his warriors attempted to kill us, but Amoldo and some of his companions attacked them, giving us time to escape. That explains the blood on their faces, Sumaisai said, baring her teeth in a grim smile. Yes, Amoldo said, which brings us to the subject of my latest mission. Tiriel isn't yet aware of your part in the escape, Chief Amazua, but she has been busy with other matters. Contrary to what Tiriel would have us believe, there are many who still support you, Your Majesty, and she is currently forming a plan to crush their resistance. Unfortunately, she now has complete control of your army, forcing many Shi'arists to join them. If they resist, they are imprisoned. She has violated yet another of your laws, by taking the weapons of those who oppose her, by force if not given up willingly. She has even given orders to take their farming tools, to prevent them from making weapons out of them. Some gasped with dismay as Amoldo finished his report. The dragons snorted angrily, and the tigers, leopards, Kasia, and Tokwai snarled. The centaurs' faces hardened, some stomping their hoofs against the ground. Terrell said nothing, but her face was terrible to behold. Though horrified at Amoldo's report, Merlara allowed herself reflect that Terrell would prove a valuable ally. She had never realized how much she and Terrell had in common, in spite of their disagreements. Conspiracies, alpha male of the One Blood Pack, snarled. The witch intends to starve her own people into submission. She claims to have considered that, Amoldo answered. She says that all who give up their weapons peacefully, will be provided with clothing, and food from her own table. But all who oppose her will receive nothing. A silence fell at his words. Merlara kept her eyes on the ground, though she knew everyone was looking at her. I am the cause of this, she said at last. None of this would have happened if I hadn't trusted her. As a few of you know, I trusted Tyor when she suggested I send ambassadors to Callagan. But she only did so, in order to send assassins after them, causing more unrest among the people. At the time I blamed Terrell and Higlek, especially as the surviving ambassador said most of the assassins were rising bows. And so they were, Terrell said. I was one of the few who knew how Tyor was taught. But she began to distrust me, when I made it clear treason was a line I wouldn't cross. She persuaded my tribe to rebel against me, well knowing it would turn your attention away from Higlek. Nahim became aware of the extent of my tribe's rebellion, and came to warn me not long after hearing of the rumors against you. At the time I didn't heed, but the night of the rebellion, I found there were few of my tribe left to support me. If Tyor no longer trusted you, Liseo said, why weren't you killed or imprisoned? I would have been executed that night, if I hadn't feigned loyalty to her. I intended to free the queen under cover of night, and escape on horseback, but the dragons came before I could. It was then I asked to come with them. My request would have been denied, if Nahim hadn't defended me. It is well that he did, Kahira said. Not only for your sake, but for the information you may possess. Tyor and Higlek were closer to you than either Nahim or Ladiel. Any knowledge you have will be invaluable. Terrell nodded respectfully. And Merlara, keep in mind you weren't the only one deceived. Your mother considered Lady Visalia her friend. She was clearly skilled in the art of manipulation, and taught Tyor to do the same. Kahira's words did little to comfort Merlara. It still remains that thanks to my trust in her, Tyor now controls Tyor. She deceived us all, Kunisk said. You weren't the only one she had to manipulate for her plan to work. And you've forgotten she didn't have complete control over you, Sumaisai added. When I informed you of Tunore's supposed betrayal, it was Tyor who attempted to turn you against him. And she was visibly displeased when you refused to force him to confess his intentions. She doubtless feared Tunor suspected her, and hoped by turning you against him to protect herself. Would that I had suspected her, Tunor said grimly. I sensed there was more to the accusations against you than appeared, but I never would have suspected Tyor as the culprit. She played her part well. It is futile to consider what might have been, Ladiel said gravely. What we're trying to say, Merlara, is that Tyor may have projected her triumph as being possible through you, but she had to manipulate all of us for her plans to succeed. Merlara nodded in acknowledgement, though the feeling of guilt remained. There was a moment of silence, which was broken by Kahira. "I know this is painful for you, Merlara, but we must know if you have any information about Tyrael we're not aware of." Merlara's heart sank. She'd been dreading the moment she would have to reveal what passed between her and Tyrael. Reluctantly, she related the details of their conversation in the prison. No one interrupted her. Sail Soa was visibly shocked, as were her people and the Kasia and Tokwai. Surprise, pity, and rage frequently showed on the Biolan's faces. Though they had all known of Tyrael's lack of remorse, they hadn't thought it was to the extent Merlara revealed it to be. Sumaisai and her brothers had known her for less time than Ladiel and Nahim, but were still visibly horrified. Ladiel, Nahim, and Terrell were stunned, hardly able to believe Merlara was speaking of the same person. Tunore's reaction was particularly painful to her. His expression went from a look of disbelief, to a stern expression that concealed an anger few would care to confront if revealed. Though she felt awkward about it, she even mentioned the moment her voice ended in a growl, and how Tyrael was visibly alarmed by it. When she finished, a silence fell that seemed to her to last almost 10 minutes. Then Aelist and Aaron looked at each other, as if coming to a decision. All eyes turned to them. "What you've told us," Aaron said, "has confirmed a suspicion we had the moment we heard of your plight." Merlara looked at him, a feeling of dread coming over her. "I don't understand." "There is much you have yet to understand," Aelist answered. "For we've only just learned it ourselves. You may remember your parents telling you of a prophecy King Orga gave Queen Familia, that you were charged never to speak of to anyone." Merlara stiffened, looking at Aelist distrustfully. Her parents had once told her only direct descendants of the royal bloodline, and a few black dragons and white foxes, knew of Orga's ability to see into the future. How he had told Queen Familia that the people of Tyor would turn against the dragons, and a new queen would rise to lead them against the Seldrian. According to historical records kept secret from the public, it was to ensure the safety of that queen that the dragons left Tyor. Though her parents had taught it to her as seriously as they taught all of Tyor's history, Merlara had come to think of it less and less, deeming it insignificant. What did it matter what Orga had foreseen? It didn't help her with the present state of her kingdom. "Yes," she said coldly, "I know of the prophecy concerning Aodhnait, the queen who will rise to defeat the Seldrian." "Then you also know," Aelist said, "that no one yet knows what the name Aodhnait means, but that it will be revealed when she reaches her full power." "What's the point of all this?" Merlara asked sharply. Kahira looked at her intently, as if trying to read her thoughts. "Your parents assured me you would know the whole prophecy, save for one detail. Many were not told of it, to ensure the safety of Aodhnait when she was revealed." Kahira's face softened, her eyes filled with tears. "That is why you never knew of me. We knew she would need a tutor, one who had devoted his or her life to the old ways. Unfortunately, such a role required concealment, and I took that role upon myself. The day I left Tyor, I never suspected that that was the last day I would see your mother." Merlara's heart stopped as she began to realize what she was implying. She looked at Tunor, but he seemed just as shocked as she was. "No," she whispered. "It can't be true." "I'm afraid it is," Aaron said softly. Merlara started, surprised he had heard her. "One part of the prophecy was not told to you, not just to keep it from falling on the wrong ears, but also to protect you. King Orga gave Queen Familia one sign that would reveal who Aodhnait was." Merlara felt Tunore's hand slip into hers. She clung to it, willing herself not to lose control. Aaron looked at her sadly, his eyes filled with sympathy. She would be betrayed by the one closest to her, he said softly. One who knew her better than any save her parents. This person, whether male or female, would imprison her in her own kingdom, the first of your people to ignite civil war. Merlara stared at him, unsure whether to scream or cry. Suddenly a thought struck her, and she looked at Ladiel and Nahim. You knew of this? She shouted. You knew Tyor would betray me. You kept it from me to ensure the prophecy would be fulfilled. Ladiel attempted to soothe her. It was never our intention to harm you, Merlara, and we didn't know for certain that you were Aodhnait. We and the few people we trusted thought so at one point, but we eventually dismissed it. All of us, that is, except your mother, who wouldn't take any chances of us being wrong. Merlara felt a chill run through her, realizing the significance of Ladiel and Kahira's words. Her parents had known of Tyor's possible betrayal from the moment Lord Wenrys and Lady Visalia died, leaving them as the closest thing Tyor could call family. With the parallels between the prophecy and her and Tyor's relationship, they had no doubt considered sending Tyor away. And yet they still chose to treat her as one of their own, perhaps out of obligation to her deceased parents, or consideration for the love between her and their daughter. But to what end? If they were so suspicious, why didn't they tell me? Merlara exclaimed. My parents were the last people I would expect to keep such information from me. After much debate, we decided to tell you when your training was complete, Ladiel explained. We didn't want to burden you with such knowledge before you were ready. But when the time came, the Seldrian invaded, and your mother died not long after. We thought it better to wait until your time for mourning had passed, and you had established your authority. Merlara made no attempt to conceal her anger. She didn't even care what the dragons or Biolans thought of her behavior. Then you waited too late. Did you really think nursing my grief was worth the price of my ignorance? If I had known, my people would be safe. Tyor looked at her in dismay, making no attempt to conceal his distress. Merlara, you have already forgotten what we just established. Tyor manipulated all of us. Are you really sure that you would have discovered her true character? What you've told us proves she wouldn't have allowed you to do so. Even if you had confronted her, she most likely would have removed your suspicions. She even admitted to manipulating Higlek, as he's unaware she wasn't taught as he was. Merlara released his hand and looked at him coldly. Don't think I've dismissed your actions. You may not have known of this any more than I, but it's clear you would have concealed it. I won't tolerate being used without my consent. If we have done so, it was not our intent, Amazua said. We are truly sorry we had to keep these things from you. And you're right, we waited longer than we should have. But our only goal was, and still is, to protect you. Tyor is not to blame for what has befallen your people. He was following orders, which he swore to obey. He had no choice in the matter. Merlara said nothing, but deep down she knew he was right. There was no point in speculating what might have happened, had she known the last half of the prophecy. She knew now. And however much she wished to change the past, she could only control the present. What she chose to do now would determine her people's fate. Forgive me, she said wearily, I mean no offense to your people or my friends. I owe you my life, and I can in no way repay that debt, unless it be to accomplish the mission assigned to me. You will do far more if you accept the role, Aaron answered. Accepting the Seldrian, you will unite all known races of the world, from the shores of Biola, to the crags of Dunur. So King Orga has foreseen. But this will only come to pass if you agree to it. For none have the power to bind you. You must choose your path, whether it be to do what has been foreseen, and unite us under one banner to forever free us from the Seldrian's tyranny, or to do only what is necessary to liberate your people, and be at peace. Though I fear it may only be for a season. The choice is yours." Merlara sat still, pondering Aaron's words. Though it had angered her to think that a 2,000-year-old prophecy controlled her destiny, it was just as unnerving to realize she could render it meaningless if she chose. Two choices lay before her, neither of them easy to achieve. She could take the throne back from Tyor to save her people, and merely drive the Seldrian from Tyor. Or she could become the leader King Orga had foreseen, rendering the Seldrian completely powerless, or even exterminating them, if she so wished. Though there were many reasons for her to choose the first option, what really made the latter logical, was the realization that driving the Seldrian away wouldn't guarantee their safety. "I think," she said slowly, "the choice is made for me." She looked around at them all, their gazes meeting hers. She stood up, strode to the center of the circle, and turned, facing the dragons. "We may drive the Seldrian from our lands, and save all we hold dear now. But what profit is it, if we defeat them, only to have them return 100, or 1,000 years hence? The greatest nations of our time have thrived because they considered who would come after." She paused, observing their reaction to her words. Aelist stood up, the eagles perched on her back alighting on the ground beside her. Aaron nodded, as if in approval. The Silj and Kasia looked at Merlara intently, waiting for her to continue. Some of the centaurs stepped forward, as if to hear better. The tigers bared their teeth, an action Merlara knew was their way of showing respect. The Tokwai seemed determined not to be impressed, but Merlara could see she had their attention. Our ancestors, wise as they were, failed to understand this, and we're suffering the consequences. They preserved their generation, only to fail ours. The Seldrian will stop at nothing to destroy our people. One of the male Tokwai snarled. Indeed. And what exactly do you mean by our people? What of us, or the people who shelter you? Merlara met the lion's gaze without flinching. When we unite under one banner, against one common enemy, we are one people. It matters not if you have 4 legs or 2, if you have the body of a stallion and the body of a man. Whether your skin is white or brown. Whether you have wings, whether you are furred or feathered. We are one, and we will fail if we forget that for a moment. As her words faded into the wind, Aaron stepped forward, bending his head down to her level. Merlara stood still as his shadow passed over her. She looked into Aaron's eyes, her reflection showing clearly in them. Though it was difficult to read his expression, Merlara sensed she had impressed him, and that her response had exceeded his expectations. For a moment, human and dragon silently observed each other. Then on a sudden impulse, Merlara placed her hand on his head. Instantly, her senses were overwhelmed with thoughts and feelings so alien, she knew they weren't her own. The feelings she felt were a strange mix of surprise, confusion, joy, and anticipation. She shuddered as the sudden thought of teeth ripping into the neck of a Seldrian came to her mind. But those feelings quickly faded into terror, as the wild lands, Silj, Kasia, Tokwai, and Biolands vanished from her sight. She felt as if her mind had left her body, floating in a vast void. Then her vision cleared, but it was not the wild lands that lay before her. She saw herself on Aaron's back, crossing a green field. Her face was hard, but shone with purpose. Her armor was the color of gold, shining in the sunlight. In her right hand was a sword, Dunarian words carved into the blade, though they weren't clear enough to read. Aelist walked beside them, Tyor on her back. His armor was the same as Merlara's. Lustri, Kunisk, Vasiri, and Terrell rode black stallions on their right. Kahira, Sumaisai, and Saelso were on her left. Their armor and swords were identical to hers, the same words carved into the blades. Even Sumaisai had armor, covering her from head to toe. It moved with her body smoothly, imitating the grace of her movements. Behind them was an army that had never been seen in recorded history. Kasia and Tokwai walked side by side. Silj, Callagans, Biolans, and Tyrians marched together on foot and on horseback. Behind them, dragons of all shapes and colors soared in the sky. Others walked on the outskirts of the host. Merlara raised her arm, and the army halted. To her right, the ranks parted to make way for a golden dragon, larger than Aelist and Aeron combined. Suddenly the dragon froze, staring across the field. Some of the soldiers began to back away, shock and horror in their faces. The dragon snarled and crouched as if to attack. Even the Biolans, Kasia, and Tokwai looked alarmed. Merlara saw herself and her companions turn pale. The hand that held her sword trembled. The ground shook, and a dark shadow passed over them, blocking out the sun. Then the vision faded, melting into the dry plains of the wild lands.